We call it martial law. This segment is intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. And that would be Mr. Marshall Chriswell. Good morning to you. Good morning, Todd. It's good to have you with us here today. What are we talking about today?
Todd, I thought we'd talk a little bit about trusts.
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed some issues related to trusts in the past, but something that comes up with some regularity in my practice is the issue of, okay, someone is creating a will, creating an estate plan, and they have one or more beneficiaries, people that they would like to leave assets to when they're gone, but unfortunately, this potential beneficiary has some issues. Whether this person is not good with money, has an addiction issue, an alcohol issue, a gambling problem, is someone that is maybe someone who's a little naive, maybe easily taken advantage of, and you've got a parent or a grandparent who wants to leave some assets behind to them, but they think, well, it's maybe not the best idea just to have them receive funds directly from the estate. We may need to set up a trust, and it's something we call a spendthrift trust.
Mm-hmm. So you are protecting their inheritance, and in some cases you're protecting it from themselves, from the recipients of it themselves. So how do you structure such a thing?
Well, what it's called is a spendthrift trust, and that's the spendthrift is an old term, and it used to refer to it used to be a noun actually. That a spendthrift is a person that couldn't control their spending habits, and so that's how this trust got its name, and it takes on many different forms. And one good thing about most trusts is that when we're creating a trust for a client, it's very flexible. In the terms of the trust are very flexible. So we really can structure these in all sorts of different ways to meet the client's goals. For example, you may have a parent or grandparent who has a child with an addiction issue, and unfortunately, we're seeing this,
Sure.
Lots and lots of times. And so the question is, all right, so we're going to put this trust in place, and a trust is a relationship, a legal relationship where someone is saying, all right, I'm going to give money to a trustee, or I'm going to give assets to a trustee to hold for the benefit of a beneficiary. So you've got this middle person, the trustee, who can be a family member or a professional trustee or a bank, and they're going to be holding these funds. And so the question is, all right, well, how much discretion is the trustee going to have? Is there going to be a structured way that they're going to make payments to or for the beneficiary? Or, is it going to be more discretionary? And how are they going to know when it's safe to do that? And so, I've even done trusts where we put drug testing in place.
Oh.
You put whether it's a period of urinalysis testing or hair follicle testing, or however we decide to set it up, and so then it gives strict instructions to the trustee. Hey, if this person isn't clean for a period of time, you're not gonna give any money to them directly. You may be able to use the money to pay for medical care for them, or for some sort of treatment, or necessities, but you're certainly not going to give them cut them any checks directly. So it's very flexible in how you can set these up.
Yeah. And I assume that with this being called a spendthrift type of trust, that there are other types of trusts that also are part of this whole process.
Absolutely. There are all different types of trusts that we use. And any good estate planning attorney is going to have a toolbox with all sorts of different tools, and trusts are one of those tools. And there are lots of different types of, just like you have lots of different socket wrenches and screwdrivers, there are many, many different types of trusts that you use for different situations. Another common type of trust that I draft is a special needs trust. If you have a beneficiary who is, you have a child, you have a grandchild, other person you want to leave money to that has special needs, and it could foreseeably, maybe they are, or they in the future will be relying on government benefits for their income, maybe SSI through Social Security Agency, or Medicaid. That's very important that you consider that, because if someone receives an inheritance outright, if they just get a life insurance check or a check from your estate for $100,000, well, that's all well and good, but it's not great if it makes you lose your monthly income and lose your health insurance because you've gone over the asset limit for those government programs. So there's to counteract that, you can put a special needs trust in place that has a trustee holding those funds. They never actually go into the hands of the beneficiary with the special needs, and if it's crafted correctly, and it has to be done very, very carefully and specifically, but you can actually avoid the loss of those government benefits that are so important to that beneficiary, but still be able to provide them with some assets and income to improve their quality of life.
Well, that therefore anybody who is a beneficiary of a trust, because of their special circumstances, might be vulnerable to someone who could take advantage of them. So it really is a good idea. Do people often challenge the trust that is set up in their name to try to get control of it?
Well, one thing that you have to be very careful with is who you're selecting as your trustee. This is always, a point of a lot of conversation. We definitely want to flesh this out whenever I'm discussing this with a client. Many times the trust, it's not going to. These aren't always rich people, okay? These aren't going to be millions of dollars. So it's going to be difficult sometimes to find a bank or a trust company that's going to take on this work, because it's smaller trusts, so they don't make as much money from it. So they have a threshold; they're not going to take it on. So you've got to find a family member, a friend, a trusted, someone in your life that you trust to be a trustee. And this person has to understand, and they really should be part of the conversation. Because they've got to understand they're going to be quite possibly having to withstand the beneficiary coming to them and saying, "Hey, I need money, I need this, I need that," and they've really got to be kind of strong-willed and make sure that that they are carrying out the terms of the trust as the grantor, as the client originally wanted, it can become very difficult. Particularly when you do have a beneficiary who has drug or alcohol issues, and the trustee might be getting phone calls at 2 or 3 in the morning asking for for some cash, and of course they've got to say no, and so that can be very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that when we talk about setting up a will and estate planning in general, we tend to think as human beings that we're indestructible until that moment when we find out that we're not. So I'm sure that you would like for that to be done as early as possible in someone's life, so it's taken care of. It's not a concern of theirs going down the road, especially if there are health problems that will soon crop up, and your attention needs to be focused there.
Absolutely. And I joke, a lot of times I have, most of the time, clients come in and they say, well, I've been putting this off for a long time. I know that I need these are things I need to get taken care of. And I often joke and say, well, I don't meet with many 18-year-olds. Okay. That's just That's just the way it is. It's a natural, like you said, you don't realize your own mortality until something happens in your life. A lot of times that's, someone losing a parent or a loved one and realizing, they didn't have their affairs taken care of. That made it really tough on our family. Let me make sure that I don't make the same mistake. So it often takes that kind of moment of reality or a health scare or something like that. But absolutely, I urge folks to think about it early.
So that being the case, would that initial conversation come when you're getting into the estate planning process, or do people typically come to you and say, I want to do this now, but maybe not so much talk about the estate? I want to do the trust now to make sure that's taken care of. It seems like it should be one and the same.
It's generally it's all part of one conversation. If someone comes to me and says, "Well, I want to set up a trust and put some money away for my kids or my grandkids, and I want to structure it this way or that way," that automatically is going to lead into a conversation of, okay, well, what's going to happen, down the road when you're no longer here? There are other assets, and how are we going to structure that? So it just makes sense to take care of all these things at one time.
Yeah, really would. All right, so if somebody wants to get involved in that process and get the ball rolling, if you will, what should they do?
You can always give me a call, 724-465-5826. Stop and see me in the old R&P Coal Building, which is at 655 Church Street in Indiana, or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com. He
is Marshall Chriswell, and the segment is called Marshall Law. Marsh, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good rest of the week.
You too.
Rest of the week.
You too.